Welcome back, ladies, gentlemen, and NBs, and thank you for tuning back into St. Andrew TV, a cure for your Monday blues. I am your host, Andrew, and as you can see, we are down here with a bunch of different utensils here in front of us because we are doing more Civil War cooking today. This is a recipe known as Hellfire Stew, and it consists of 3 simple ingredients. Hardtack, which right here, I've already done a video on how to make hardtack. Means that's one of the ingredients. You can go back and watch that before we move any further here. We have bacon grease and we have water. And after all this, I'm going to tell you where I got this recipe and I'm going to show you how to make it. Now, Hellfire Stew is very historically accurate to the time because it actually comes out of the diary of William Bircher, a Civil War drummer. And he was the drummer of the 2nd Regiment Minnesota Veteran Volunteers for the Union during the Civil War. I'm paraphrasing a bit, but he wrote something along the lines of, after a long march, the hardtack would actually be broken down in their sacks that they were carrying with them, and they would actually use it to make a supper after a hefty distance that they have traveled. They would soak the crumbled up hardtack in water and they would fry it in some sort of pork grease. And that is precisely what we are going to do today. Now, before we get into the historical accuracy, pork grease either being from salt pork or even in some cases bacon grease, both are wildly acceptable, even though salt pork was more common. Some regiments were issued bacon instead of salt pork. So the first thing you're actually going to do is get your grease piping hot all the way up on the oven, which I'm assuming is where you make it, or over the fire, and get that thing sizzling hot. That is the idea here because we are going to fry this. Now, before I say that, we have our bacon fat right here. And how I'm going to do it is put a little bit in here. I'm going to fill it up about 1/8 of the way up the side of the pan here because, like we are going to go over here in a second, we don't want it to be overwhelming. We're not deep frying this concoction, we are just frying it. As it is heating up, now is where you start your next steps, and you're actually going to take 2 crackers of hardtack that are around 3.5 inches up and sideways. I don't happen to have the proper size crackers for this, but I'm going to make do with 4 smaller crackers. And William does write in his diary that the older the cracker, the better. Or in St. Andrew's words, the harder the better. We're going to take our hardtack crackers and we are going to set them in this here tinder pouch and tighten everything up. Now, back in the day, you would go find a big blunt object that you would crush this up into. Not so much like a flour consistency, but fine enough where you might see some bigger pieces in there, but relatively fine. And you would do this by finding a big blunt object, such as the back of an axe, or maybe a rock that was near your encampment. Or maybe you could use your big juicy axe. I got this hammer, which is historically accurate. This is an 1861 hammer out of the Black & Decker set. Alright, now that we've beat this down into a more desirable consistency, that is what you're going to be left with. And the next ingredient that you're going to include in this beautiful recipe is water. And this out cup has been here the entire time. Go back and see. It didn't appear by accident. There is no proper measurement to how much water you're going to use. However, the idea is to cover the hardtack. Don't spill it, and you're going to stir it around until that water is absorbed. Every bit of hardtack should have some moisture in it. The idea is for it to soak up that moisture Make sure there's no really dry areas in your hardtack, because that is how you make your final product really crunchy. It should feel a little bit more soft. It should be gritty because it is obviously just bread that's going to be fried in some pork fat. But the idea is to make it a more desirable dinner instead of something that you're forcing down your gullet. And trust me, with how dehydrated hardtack is in nature, you're going to go through a little bit of water. Not so much that it should be drowning and it should be soupy. However, you would be surprised how much the hardtack absorbs. As I say, you can't drown it. Here I am. Here's your oatmeal. As I'm doing this, this is about the consistency you're looking for. William Bircher does write in his diary that it is well stirred and seasoned with salt and pepper, which is what we're about to do here in a second. But stirring is a main component of making this properly. You're going to stir it here, make sure that water gets absorbed into that hardtack, and then when it's actually in the greased up pan that you're using over a fire or on your oven, in our case, you are going to make sure that you keep stirring it. And that is the whole goal. If you'd like to add salt and pepper, that is not a necessity. That is up to personal preference. Don't feel obligated to. I am, because my trial run this morning consisted of no salt nor pepper, and I would like to try it with those two extra ingredients. If you're curious to see how tough it is to eat, you can even go in here. It's just water and flour at this point. And you can see if it's going to be a challenge to chew. Like I mentioned, we are going to add salt and pepper off this plate that is definitely able to be washed in a dishwasher. And we're just going to keep mixing it together. Even that salt might absorb some of that extra water that I thought I put too much in, but I apparently didn't, and that salt's going to make it even easier for me down the road. But I digress. When you add that salt and pepper, just mix it in nice and fine. All right, so now that we're done mixing and getting it ready for the skillet here, that is probably the consistency that you're going to want to aim for. I'm going to heat up this pan, and I'm going to show you how much volume of the pan it's actually taking up with how much bacon grease. You saw I use about a spoon, maybe a spoon and a quarter's worth, and it's supposed to be only about 1/8 of the way up this pan here. The idea is not to deep fry it again. It is just to fry it, and you're basically just greasing the bottom of the pan, making sure that all that hardtack soaks up the water and also the grease itself, and it's supposed to be a more smooth dish instead of something that's coarse. So as I go prepare to cook this real quick, you won't see that portion because the kitchen's over here and I'm right here, and I'm not bringing the kitchen, the whole kitchen, out in here. But when you cook it, you would like it to be a golden brown and more towards that brown side, but don't burn it. If you burn it a little bit, it's not going to taste that great. So I would suggest the golden brown is the standard, and if you can get it more towards the brown side, that is ideal. I actually did come back from the kitchen. I don't know how well you can see that. That is about the amount of grease that you're going to have once it melts, and that is what you are going to throw your hardtack into. And at the end, you should just see the sides be a little bit more shiny because the grease was in there, but there shouldn't be much to drain after you pull the hardtack, or I guess now the Hellfire Stew, out of the cast iron pan. As you can hear my friend here, he's still quite heated over our last altercation. But the idea is to go stand over this and get it to a golden brown, which I'll put my oven mitt now on to make sure I don't burn my hand. That is about what you're looking for. I sat there and stirred it. Keyword being stirred. You want to consistently keep moving it around for about 10-12 minutes, and that is what you're left with. I brought it in here because I always liked the Food Channel, and when they plated the food, I always thought that was fun. I liked when Gordon Ramsay would talk about how great the plating was. I doubt he would think this is anything that would be even borderline edible, but here we are. As you can see, like I told you earlier, you're going to want all this to soak up that grease, and you can see, like I said, there's that shine from the grease on there, but nothing outstanding, nothing that you need to drain later, just perfect for next use. You're always supposed to grease your cast iron. You already did it. So now, as I probably am going to burn my mouth because I am very eager to try this, especially means I did it a little better this time and let it soak in water and add a little salt and pepper, I am going in for the taste test. I'm wearing my 12th Ohio neckerchief from the Civil War, so I am ready to eat like one of those members of the military.
What are you doing, Andrew? You fucking freak!
God, that is good. That's really good. I wish I had a cup of coffee because I feel like that would accent it so perfectly. After the initial taste test, I must say that this is very, very good. I don't think you'd find this at a fine dining establishment. However, if you were on a 20-mile march in the Civil War from point A to point B, and this is all you had left to eat, you could do worse. It's very soft, but not too soft where it feels like you're eating like soup or something. I would venture to guess that you could make this, at least in today's day and age, for breakfast, and you could probably slop maybe cornbread in here. I would even say this would go well and complement perfectly some corned beef hash. I also thought of if you threw a little egg in this and maybe threw a little chopped up potatoes in here. Oh boy, I tell you what, this is a would recommend. This is pretty damn good. Actually, I'll go in for seconds to let you know that I'm not just blowing smoke up your ass. My initial thoughts with a recipe that says 2 3.5-inch square pieces of hardtack, water, and pork grease with a little bit of salt and pepper there. My initial thoughts is going to be very dry, very bland, and it even has something, I even wrote down something that says if your final product is a little too dry, add more grease. And if it's a little wet, add a little bit more water-soaked hardtack. Like I said, a very simple recipe with everything that I just stated that turned into this. I would have to say that this was a pretty good dish in terms of like what you were expecting at like a Civil War camp with the bare bones. You could make something that is very edible, if not borderline good. And you would actually, outside of a military setting, would probably try and eat if funds were low or something like that. This is very simple to make. Anyway, that is how you make Hellfire Stew. And like I said, the ingredients are 2 3.5-inch square hardtack crackers, water, bacon grease, and if you'd like, salt and pepper. And this comes to us from the Diary of William Bircher, a Civil War drummer. Can't get much more historically accurate than a in-person documented events about somebody who was actually seeing the struggles during the American Civil War. Thank you everyone for getting this far into the video. I certainly do appreciate it. Please leave a like if you've enjoyed today's video, or leave me a comment stating what you liked, or tell me what I should cook next. If you guys are interested, I do have a Patreon that I have had open for a few months now. I do take pride in being community funded and community funded only. For everyone here at St. Andrew TV, we would like to keep it that way. We do not want any masters, any overlords telling us which direction to move the content, so you know that everything here on St. Andrew TV is homegrown and grass-rooted. That's not to say to feel obligation about donating to the Patreon, only if your means allow you to do so. The YouTube videos will always remain free. Thank you to everyone who has subscribed as of late, but for those of you who have come across this video and you like me, maybe you want more Civil War recipes, or maybe you just wanted to see me do my best impersonation of Christian's friends. Think about hitting that subscribe button, because you're a daisy if you do. Yeah!